so much for attending this morning. My name is Courtney Burden. I'm the president of the Chamber of Commerce here in Bullitt County, and we are proud to continue to expand our role in the community. And today is a great event because we are giving access to leadership, decision makers, legislatures who are making our changes, making improvements. So I would like to thank Anita Stump and the Chamber staff for your hard work to get us together in this room. And I would like to introduce Congressman Guthrie in a very informal manner. Sure. We appreciate what you do, Congressman Guthrie, and I just want to make sure, for those of you who don't know much about Congressman Guthrie, the kind of person he is, when my daughter was applying for the Naval Academy, he stopped what he was doing in the middle of a very busy time in his life, and he shifted energy to my daughter and myself. He made calls to us, he made sure that we had the right connections. So I can tell you from a personal account, this congressman will go above and beyond for his constituents, even if no one ever hears about it, even if no one knows about it, and that is why it is so easy for me to brag on him. So I would like to also say, from the healthcare side of things, because I am a practice administrator for a group of ophthalmologists, I appreciate that Congressman Guthrie is the chairman of the healthcare subcommittee. And so he has all of these opportunities to make changes and to be our voice. So we want to make sure when we are speaking with him and his team that we are being clear about what we need and our expectations, and as a community, what we're doing, how to brag on ourselves, but also how to reach out for the things that we need. So without further ado, Congressman Brett Guthrie.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I think I have to use this because there's a podcast going on. So I may have to repeat your question, so whoever's on the podcast can hear. But thanks for having me here, and it's always great to be here in Bullitt County. Of course, Pearcoat Springs, I remember, I guess it was my last big rally in 2008 when I was running for office here with Mrs. Bush. So that was it's always a great memory and a great time to be here. So we kind of thought like it was going to be a round table. Too many people sit around the table and have a discussion. So when you do round tables, I don't give long, boring speeches. I said, if you don't hear a long, boring speech, come to a Lincoln Day, or if you're not a Republican, come to a chamber dinner. So why don't we just talk about, if you guys get up at 10 o'clock in the morning, not get up, I know, but up. If you leave your business at 10 o'clock in the morning you probably got something on your mind. And so I'd rather talk about what you want to talk about. And I found when I just take questions, we usually cover everything that's moving forward. So who wants who has something? I know the railroad tracks, you want to start there? We're trying to figure out exactly who has jurisdiction, and so I guess I'm giving a speech. I'm just talking about the railroads. Back in the years ago when they were running railroads, I mean like centuries, or turn of the last century or even earlier, when they were trying to run railroads across the country, and of course it goes through private land and public land, so they had to make sure if the railroads are going to connect, not have 1 acre of somebody in between keeping you from getting from New York to San Francisco, and you had an acre you had to go around. Then they gave railroads a lot of dispensation and a lot of power in terms of their right of ways and so forth. So we're going to figure out exactly what the rules are, but it's CSX, right? It's not Louisville and Luca. We'll reach out to them and go forward. But go ahead. What's your next question? I know. I never know.
Mine, I spoke to Mr. Lord, I think it was the first part of last month, and found out through Judge Jerry Summers that the state county cannot do anything within like 25 feet of each side. Because I was asking, there's a real bad pothole on 44 as you're heading from west to east. It's not much better east to west.
Okay.
That if they couldn't just put in some blacktop or something until CSX got here to really fix the problem. And so that part got kind of shot down by the local folks here.
Because they say they don't have the right of way to get on the road. Seems like they would want them to go do it and not have to do it themselves. So we're going to figure that out.
But I was also told if anything gets touched on the railroad by anybody, CSX representative has to be there to make sure it's done properly. I can't get it through my head by putting blacktop that doesn't affect the tracks at all cannot be taken care of by state, local, whatever. people.
Right.
But most of the railroad tracks, as you head north, if they're on 1020 by the, I guess you'd say on the south end of the golf course, it's real nice, and the one going across the Burks exit going to Highway 1020 is in good shape. But Adam Shepherd and the one here on 44
Okay.
are bad, and just, I don't know why they let them get in that shape. So
Yeah, we need to change the way that we're operating, not even this situation, just overall, if they can fix. You know, I guess they have liability for, but you're right, if they're not getting on the tracks,
Yeah.
I guess they just want to make sure they're not doing something to the tracks because they have the liability of it, but, and I understand that, but my gosh, if I owned a railroad, which I don't, I would, if the county's willing to fix a problem I gotta fix,
Yes.
then I think it makes sense to me. I would say more power to you.
Especially we have probably thousands of cars daily on a good day, but when they were 65 has a wreck, we got an awful lot more traffic.
Oh, I know 44, and that's
Yeah.
something that I know, Tom, and we've all been everything. And when I was in the General Assembly, people were talking about fixing 44. And the problem of it is, if you drive it, because I was the transportation person, just in general, I'm talking about 44 in general, it's got to be in people's minds, is that every drive, so you talk about one family, one person, and so what you would think, maybe you could just take a little bit of each yard, and therefore you're not wiping out an entire side of the road. But the problem is the utilities are right there too. So you got to move all the utilities. So fixing 44 in places where it's choke points is the thing. And the other one is there needs to be an alternate route. That's the only way that's really going to move traffic around 44.
I remember
That's a
Senator
priority.
Barnback was our senator. He said it would cost more to buy the right of way for 44
Then to build an
than
alternative
to
route.
build the actual road itself.
Well, you said Senator Hornback. Mine goes back to Senator Tapp. Remember Gary Tapp? He was trying to. That was a big issue for him.
Yes.
And there's been some improvements, as you've seen,
Oh, yes.
but it doesn't fix there's too many cars for that size of a road, and you can't widen the road. Yeah.
So I just appreciate anything y'all can do to help us.
Thanks. Thank you. Oh, well, that's well noted. You got to have another question on policy, Washington, what's going on. I've seen you at town halls. I know you follow the news. What's your next question? I'll get you started.
Well, there's too many.
You got one.
I'll do one.
All right.
Yes. Good morning, Congressman
morning.
Guthrie, Mackenzie Wallace with the Alzheimer's Association. Obviously, I know all of the wonderful things that you do for the association, but I thought it might be nice to share with some
Okay.
constituents some of the reasons why and some of the things you've done for this disease.
Go right ahead.
And I think primarily, I'll let you talk about the BOLD Act because that was really your brainchild. But to let some of you fellow Kentuckians know that we are now a BOLD grant recipient. So as of this past July, we have $2 million coming into the state to work on the public health infrastructure for Alzheimer's and dementia over the next 5 years. Very exciting. But I thought I'll give you that segue to
That's
talk
a good
to everyone
segue.
about how it's so important. So thank you so much.
So the question for those on the podcast or listening is the BOLD Act, which is a bill that I supported, but it deals with Alzheimer treatment and Alzheimer. And what it basically does is gives grants to groups to try to build out information so that providers can have more information and can help people, families that are dealing with it in the support system. Because what you learn, I just lost my mother-in-law to Alzheimer, and there's a lot of unknowns for families when they start seeing the confused parent. Oh no, what's happening? Where's this going? What's going to happen? And it's a tough disease, absolutely, on the person who's going through it, and frustrating. But it also is tough on family members, and I think almost everybody's touched by it. And so I'm the chairman of the healthcare subcommittee, and with Alzheimer's, their estimate is going to cost over $1 trillion by 2050. And I remember when I first heard that number, I was thinking, gosh, that's what's that going to do to our grandkids? But in 2050, I'm going to be 86. So I'm 60 now, so 86. And I'm thinking, my gosh, that's my children. I mean, that's me. That's my generation, and I'm the end of the baby boom. And so anything that we can do to make Alzheimer extend the life and outside of care, that's where the big, if you can stay at home longer, it saves the money. But the big thing is the research that is going on in healthcare. It is amazing how innovative that our healthcare industry has become. They can cure sickle cell now. They can cure, they can't cure cystic fibrosis, but if you had a child that was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, you would live to be 20, 25. A couple of friends that had children that way. If their kids were alive today, they'd be 70, probably live to be 70, by going in and editing the gene, which is crazy, isn't it? There's a gene that causes you not to be able to clear your lungs. They can edit the gene. And so that's what they're looking with Alzheimer's. That's what's going to save from what's breaking the bank now of our debt. I know somebody has to have that on their mind, because I certainly do, is the baby boomers retiring and going on Medicaid. It just and we knew it was coming. Paul Ryan talked about it a decade ago, and when he tried to do something about it, there were videos of him trying to push a lady over the cliff, if you remember. An actor looked like Paul Ryan pushing a lady over the cliff. And what he was saying is, we need to make sure we can provide the benefits that we promised seniors at the price their grandchildren can afford to pay for it. And now it's just running up the debt. So those reforms have to happen. But the best thing is you innovate so you don't have those big expenses. And if we could cure Alzheimer's, it would save $1 trillion. That's what they're expecting. And the problem is the brain is, if you don't, when you start learning about the brain, if you don't believe in a God, you just like, wait a minute, how could this doesn't happen by a freak of nature, in my opinion. And it's just extremely, extremely complicated. And so every time they find some pathway, they think we can clear pack this way, that it goes the other way. So some of these things like cystic fibrosis and sickle cell, they can get into the bloodstream. But the brain is, so how do you get, if I figure out how I can fix this, how do I get it, do they call the blood-brain barrier? How to get it, because if you have sickle cell, they can do a bone marrow transplant with the new gene and it takes over. But dealing with the brain is just a completely different. So all of the neurological things that we need to deal with, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's, they're more difficult to do. But that's what we have to be careful, is like in artificial intelligence. In some way we have to be careful about it, because all that really is, some people get the images like Westworld, if you ever saw that movie or read it, the Michael Crichton novel, where the robots become human because they learn so faster than us. That's really not, if that ever is going to happen, it's not probably going to happen in my lifetime. But what AI is actually just massive amounts of data. And that's what they're using to try to track this stuff and to see, all right, how do we form medicines that are going to help the most people using data. And that gets into privacy of your data. Data means there's a lot of individuals' information in a pile. And so how do you protect the pile so people don't use it in the wrong way? And so it's a long answer to say that there are drugs, Aduhelm, a couple others have been developed recently that seem to, if you're diagnosed early with Alzheimer's, then it can extend your life, or extend the time before the more serious. It can't stop it, but once they learn that with cancer, some cancers, once you figure out how to extend life 3 months, 6 months, and it's 9 months, and then it's like, wow, the 5-year recovery rate for melanoma is now, getting close to 100%, not 100%, but 90%, depends on what you have, but some of it, it's like 90% for some stage 4 melanomas, which is amazing. Speaking of that, I know somebody's been through it, so they can share if they want to. But anyway, any more questions? Yes.
Yeah, Congressman, Nathan Bellows. I'm the local chapter president for VA Rep, which is a Veterans Association of Real Estate Professionals. And you know that. I know you're also passionate about veterans. As I met you on the mall last year during Counterflight. Only Congressman, I believe, I remember seeing. So thank you for that too. My ask is really short and sweet. If you could co-sponsor HR 4335, we're currently at 100 and almost 30 co-sponsors, bipartisan support. It's really a purple bill.
What's that? So it's what bill number?
4335.
So that's the 4,335th bill. So what does it do? Tell me the title, what it does. Yeah.
Bottom line, it provides a disclosure to veterans seeking to use a VA home loan. right? So right now, if anyone goes to apply for a mortgage, that lender by law has to ask if they ever served in the military. That's where it is. So if this is passed, it would extend or close that foreclosure or that disclosure loop. So if they said yes, then the lender would then by law have to disclose, hey, here's a VA loan next to FHA conventional. Because right now, if the lender has any misconceptions about the VA loan, doesn't know about it, doesn't offer it, whatever, they don't have to discuss the VA loan. So my full-time job as a realtor, I see it firsthand where a lot of my veteran brothers and sisters, because I'm in the military as well, they have like where the lender just does not show or discuss the VA loan with them. So they don't know what they're missing out on.
Yeah.
So it would just be beneficial to have that disclosure required. It's got a CBO or Congressional Budget Office score of 0, so it doesn't cost the taxpayer anything. And so if they could just add that third column into that disclosure form that's already in existence, that would be fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me look at that. That makes sense to me. I don't know why I wouldn't before it. So let me go through the details, and then I'll get back with you on
Awesome,
that.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I guess, Mark, you got that down? Yep, perfect. Hey.
Hi, Amanda Troutman. I am a prosecutor in Jefferson County. I'm running out here to be the Commonwealth Attorney of Bullitt County. This is actually something that we have talked about with Mayor Edens. Hillview is our north end, and it borders Jefferson County. Half of, or I don't know about, approximately half of Hillview is still considered local. And for us, that is a huge deal when it comes to the census and getting our numbers accurate for budgetary purposes. When we go to Frankfurt, when we have our state reps and our senators who are fighting for Bullitt County, we need to be able to be properly represented. And because they have a local zip code.
Right, the post office.
We really think that we're being undercounted in that situation. Is there anything that we can do? Is there anything that we can do to try to rectify that, or to get Hillview their own zip code, just so that we can ensure that we are properly represented in the state senate and the House of Reps, but also just across the board.
So we got any updates, Mark? Do you have any updates on that recently? Because I know that we have been working on that, and Mark's my district director, so he might have some updates on that. That's a priority for us.
I'm only coming up here to kind of get in the audio for the recording. But there are two things, two challenges and two approaches that we can take. One is with the Postal Service, who we've been working on. We've been expressing our frustration, as we've heard it from you for 15 years now, that since we've been in office, Mayor Edens is nodding his head there, and having little success.
Yeah, they're run by commission. They used to answer directly to Congress. Now they're run by commission. So that's the issue that we've had.
So that's a dead end, unless there's some change in posture with the Postal Service. The other, though, is working with the Census Bureau in advance of the census coming up. And when we went through that most recently, there was frustration coming out of the prior year's census, prior decade census, that Mount Washington, for example, had been undercounted. And there was a more concerted effort to make sure that those households were covered in some of those zones that they felt had not been. And so, and I think we did a pretty good job. I haven't heard any adverse news about the census not covering those census tracts in North Bullitt. But I would be open to hearing that from you as we can resolve toward going next year to make sure that when the Census Department comes in, that they're working with locals to make sure that those households are counted, and we're not glossing over really dense sections that aren't otherwise being covered. So there's a two-track approach. Fortunately, what we're out to accomplish by getting representation isn't necessarily dependent on the post office.
But it is confusing for the counters.
Yes,
Do you think, so Mayor, do you think y'all are undercounted this time, or everything okay?
Shepherdsville told the mayor, not the one we have now, that they had more people than they had houses built. Absolutely, we had 300 houses built, and it barely went up in census numbers. At 300 houses, that, on the low end, 600 people. And it's constant. We're dealing with 4 zip codes for less, about 10,000 people.
Exactly.
That's totally ridiculous. We need to get to a point where I've even been to the point that I said, okay, keep your zip code, that's what y'all want to fight over your territory. Let us put Hillview, Kentucky at the end of it, so that they can get the census number right.
Because you have problems with that. I know you said occupational taxes and stuff like that too, right?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I've had businesses pay the Shepherdville that caught on to it. I mean, it's because, and I'm not blaming Shepherdville, I'm not blaming the businesses, because they are corporate offices in another state, they look down, they see Shepherdville, Kentucky zip code, and that's where they send their money. So if we're not, and we don't have software that catches that, but we have to constantly pull up this, look at what they're bringing in quarterly, to see if we're.
We need to follow up again. You've probably gotten to the point where the post office can just have a single zip code for Hillview. Your population probably grown to that point. We'll find out.
But they won't even give us they'll give us a post office box.
Well, they give you that. There's a whole system, the way the routes go and stuff like that. But hopefully, that's a good point. We need to follow up with that again.
It affects grants also. I work for the public, I'm the director of the Bullitt County Public Library, and we're expanding and modifying the Hillview branch. And for us to get grants for that, it falls into Jefferson County every time. Right down from the city. So for us to get a grant, we can't get grant money because it goes to Louisville Free Public Library. So we just have to use
Okay.
our basic things for that.
Those are good points. All right,
It
thanks.
seems something very simple, that if they just cut out the bureaucracy and all of the.
Just give you a zip code. All right, we'll see what it takes to do that.
Give me an example.
It's like dealing with the railroad sometimes in the post office, but we'll see what we got. Mr. Clerk?
As an extension of what they're asking about,
Uh-huh.
I would tell you that county clerks across the state of Kentucky are having problems in the election world on the regionalized driver's license, to where there's 4 locations in Jefferson, there's 1 in Elizabeth now. They see 40229 Louisville, and we have voters that are being assigned as a Jefferson County voter, when in reality they're ours. It's the exception, not the rule, but this goes on all the way around the border of this county. I've got West Point, I've got Louisville, I've got J-Town, I've got Boston, I've got the one Colesburg, that run the perimeter of this county because the post offices overlap the lines. And most every county clerk in the state has the same thing, but we're running into it, it's now in the poll worker training manual, to teach about the fact that if you get a voter who is not showing up in our poll book, contact the clerk's office, and ultimately we make contact with Jefferson County, try to figure out possibly through our PVA, who's collecting the taxes on their home, and at that point, who claimed them on a taxation purpose, and then we say, okay, that's their election purpose. This is their election address based on their taxation address. That's another piece of this puzzle, and it's beyond just the mail and where it's landing. So I throw that because typically clerks stuff is pretty boring.
That all matters. Yeah, it matters, doesn't it? Yeah.
And it's coming out.
Yeah, that all matters. Yeah, those regional, I know why they did it, but I like that. Going to the circuit court clerk was a lot easier than going to making an appointment at the state licensure. But I know why y'all did that. I mean, it was right before your time, Tom, when they did that. It was when I was there. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Guthrie,
Yeah.
I'm here to thank you for something you did for me.
Okay.
About 3 years ago, the IRS said I owed them $249,000. I went through months of that, sending them all of the papers that was needed, and I was ready to sell my house and just pay them because I was sick over it. And then somebody told me to contact you. I sent you all the papers, copies, you took care of it.
I remember.
I'm saying, defund the IRS. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
We don't need another 80,000 agents do we out there running around. That's one thing that's for sure. So thank you for that, and thanks for letting know. And when people come to work for our office, and I tell them when people and we do, as we teach people this when they come to work. Now there are people that call us every day, and that's fine. We enjoy hearing from our constituents. That's what we're there for. But for the most part, when people call our office with issues like you talk about, they're at their end of the rope. It's like, I don't have anything else to do, and then either they'll think to, or somebody will say, well, call your member, or they see me somewhere and say, I don't know what to do. And so that's what we try to handle, and I'm glad you had a positive experience. We can't always solve everybody's. Some people call for VA and they're not qualified for the benefits they want. We can't get them for them, but for the most part, we can work the bureaucracy. And you touched on defunding the IRS, and we obviously have to have people that process our taxes, because we have to have taxes to run the government. But I'm concerned with this 80,000. Now, we delayed it in the debt limit deal where they can't hire the 80,000, and that's been delayed for a year, and so we're going to hopefully keep delaying it moving forward. But people, if you remember when they said we want all this money for 80,000 new IRS agents, they said because we want to make sure millionaires and billionaires pay their taxes. Well, we don't have 80,000 billionaires. You could take. I wish that we did. I mean, I wish everybody would fit that category, right? But you could add 100 IRS agents and take care of that if that's what you're really concerned about. What it was getting to people who mow yards, who work in the cut hair, who get tips and things like that. Now, everybody should pay their tax. I'm not excusing it, but the people that they're going to go after are people and I have a nephew that does some things, and his Venmo account he got checked because he had some Venmo money go back and forth, which wasn't income, it was just some things. But and so I said, now that's the new law where they say it's only after people and billionaires aren't paying their fair share. That's absolutely not what they were chosen for.
Well, I'm campaigning for you.
Well, thank you. And then you think about it, the IRS was used to go through, when President Obama was president, the IRS was caught red-handed going through stopping the taxpayer or the nonprofit status of conservative groups. And so those are things that we have to, it's the whole agencies in D.C. I'm actually running for chair of Energy and Commerce Committee, which is the big Ways and Means, Energy and Commerce, the two big, about 70% of all legislation goes through Energy and Commerce. So IRS is in Ways and Means, but we still have our eye on them. And my big pitch to my colleagues who we get elected by our own fellow colleagues and chairman is protecting people from these agencies. You're talking about people in farming with EPA. I wouldn't protect, I wouldn't have jurisdiction over the IRS, but over EPA and those others. And we all want clean water. We all want clean air. But it's not a choice. I mean, it's a false choice to say, well, do you want a fossil fuel power generation or do you want clean air? Well, you can have both. What we want is access to affordable electricity. And so when they keep taking out fossil fuel plants without anything to replace them, then it raises your electric bill and it gives you insecurity in your electricity. Bowling Green's had rolling blackouts, and that's when we had the polar vortex. But because TVA decided to take out their fossil fuels, they couldn't power when it was really cold. And every now and then it gets really cold in Kentucky. We're not tropical. We're south, but we're not tropical. And you got to prepare for that. And all the growth that you've had here, all the growth that's going on in Bowling Green, a lot of it is power driven. The battery plants you see in Glendale, the Amazon, people were talking about Amazon may buy its own power source because they don't have not here, not saying here, but out in the West. So build one of these big computer sites and build their own power source because they can't depend on the grid anymore. And so those are the things that it's not just the IRS, it's everything moving forward. And I got some farmers in here is that Congress, and they ignore the law. That's what's frustrating, because Congress passed a bill in the 1970s, the Clean Water Act, and it says that the federal EPA is navigable waterways and the state EPA is non-navigable waterways. Well, at least you should be able to take a canoe down it for it to be navigable. And it's a pretty small stream you can take a canoe down, but the EPA wants to do all of it. So they say, well, if there's a ditch, then it rains, it fills up with water, it ends up, and all water ends up in the Salt River from here, ends up in the Ohio, ends up in the Mississippi, right? And so they were using that, so, well, we have everything goes, every drop of water is navigable. Well, if that was the case, Congress never would have put that in the law. And so we're fighting that as well. There's some couple of things we can do. I'm promoting, there's a thing called the REINS Act. I don't even know what all those things, like BOLD, I can't remember what they all stand for, but it's to rein in government in these agencies, and if they make any rule that costs more than $100 million to implement, which is other than just routine stuff, about everything costs that much, then it has to be approved by Congress to let the people you elect that you can talk to make those decisions. That's a top priority for me. Thanks. I'm glad you had success. Didn't sell your house. And that's the people on the podcast in here. If you got issues with federal government, please let us know. We want to help.
Can I say something about
Yes.
the tax thing?
Yes.
Okay, I had an issue kind of like that, scared the Jesus out of me, because I was part of a big family that owns some land and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, I got the bill that says you owe $8,000 back taxes, and that's not like your house thing. It's like that. But, well, it turned out that the issue was that actually I had filed on paper, and somehow they get all that paper and they don't have enough people
To process
manage
it. Mm-hmm.
And 3 months later, who knows where it went, and they finally got it. And what it took was when I could finally get hold of a person to talk to. And when I talked to the person, they worked with me, and they figured this out. So you gotta realize that the IRS does have a low number of people to deal with the things we need to deal with. Their computer systems are things that none of you would have in wrong.
They need to be
None of
updated.
us would, and it's so complicated. And the other piece of that is that there is a problem with very, very rich people not paying their taxes. And it takes more than one person to work those cases. It takes teams of people to work on those very, very lucrative, depending on who's getting the money. So please remember those things too, and I have to say that to you too.
Okay, thanks. And the problem is the 80,000 weren't addressing the issues you wanted. That's what we complained about, and said that there is staff there. What we feel they do, and we feel that we definitely know the Obama administration did, and we think it did, is that if pull people from the stuff that affects the most, therefore they can get more money, then come back and say, well, it takes 3 months to get a process done, so we need more agents. And we think they can be more, they need a better computer system, they need to be more efficient, they need to make things forward. So thanks for sharing that. Yes?
Congressman, speaking of government overreach, one of my questions would be, I've read some stuff and heard some stuff about the SEC wanting to watch everybody's transactions. Is there any truth to what they're trying to do? And then the other thing, speaking of the IRS, when I was 16, 18 years old, $600 for you got a 1099. Today it's the same amount. The dollar's not worth near as much. I believe that ought to be raised a whole lot, like double or triple what it was in the 70s, before you had to worry about a 1099. And they wouldn't need a whole bunch of these IRS agents, because we wouldn't be doing it for everybody that knows some kid that knows somebody's yard 6-7 times for $100 or whatever it happens to be, or shovels, some little old ladies, mulch, or all the different things that they want to stick their nose into.
So I'm not sure with the SEC, what did you read they were doing? I understand there's some, I know there's some action at the SEC, but I don't know specifically what you're addressing. I don't know.
Just wondering if there's
I'll figure that out.
sensationalism out there that you can see that may not be there yet. And
Yeah.
I just wondered if there was any truth to that one or not.
I'm not sure of that one. I have to find out.
Maybe of a privacy, if there's anything to it.
Yeah, we got to worry about privacy. That's true, but I'm not sure about that. I need to find out. I do know somebody brought up to me similar, something like that, and I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So we can talk about another one. I can talk about what I want to talk. So there's a couple of things I just want to talk about as well. I was going to make sure I cover what y'all want to first. You got one? Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Thank you. My name's Laura Mills, and I was recently hired for the Multi-Purpose Community Action Agency. I actually work for Spencer, Shelby, and Bullitt.
That's a great organization.
Well,
Community Action?
yes.
Yeah. Matter of fact, the national head of Community Action is going to be in Louisville this afternoon. I'm going to see him. David Bradley.
I was hired through a grant because since COVID, they've had a lot of issues with trying to get people to come back to the center once they reopen. We have one bus that carries 12 passengers for the 3 counties. That is the huge problem. We can't go out and get people and bring them in when you have one bus for 3
Right.
counties. So it's hard to go out and pitch to try to get people to come if they don't have the transportation.
Okay.
So we also deliver home meals to
Meals,
people that,
Meals on Wheels, you do that program?
it's,
Is that Meals on Wheels? There's certain
it
programs.
used to be, but
Does it change its
actually,
name?
we have volunteers that do it.
Okay.
Bullitt County delivers to 52 homes. And so they have volunteers, and then most of all of our funding is through KIPTA, and it's the Department Aging,
Aging Services?
Independent Living. And so that our main thing is transportation, is trying to find more funding, grants, whatever we can, because we just don't have the funding to hire more people, to even say if we got a grant to get a bus for each location, then you have to have a driver, you have to have it insured. So there's just so many parts that we're missing to be able to go out and get the people that do want to come in, because what I learned as I was going out training and like delivering to all the 3 counties with the people that deliver the home food, and people are just lonely, especially since COVID.
Right.
They're just, and these are 60 and older. So that's.
I'm there.
Yeah, I'm there too.
I hit there this year.
And some of them.
I'm on the
either-
lowest end of that number, but I'm there.
So either they don't have the transportation, or their family members, are working and they can't bring them to the center. And
Is that where you
they-
provide meals and keep
During
and
the hours
socialization
that
and
we're
things like
open
that?
here, we're open Monday, Wednesday, Friday at the center. And you get a hot lunch, a nutritional lunch, and we do activities. Yesterday, the Spencer County location, I took them to Bardstown to Stephen Foster Restaurant.
Okay.
But they have to pay for that. They have to pay for the dinner, their lunches and stuff themselves, unless we have donations.
Okay.
So a lot of it's donations, volunteers, and we just need more funding for
Okay.
each location.
I'm going to be with the head of that group today. He's in Louisville this afternoon, so
okay.
that's where I'm heading back up there shortly. David Bradley's his name that runs that organization, that your
Well,
association group, and so.
My director is Kim Embry,
Yeah.
and she is over Shelby, Spencer, and Bullitt.
Right. I think that so most of that funding goes to the area development district, so KIPTA for here, and I think the decisions on where to spend that money is made by the local KIPTA board.
Yes.
So the question is, how much do they have to choose to spend? And I'm almost positive they got a little increase in this last budget cycle, but I'll find out. I'll find out and let you know.
Yeah.
I know that's important.
Yeah, it really is. Like I said, and I also do some of the telephones where we call and check in on people weekly. It's called telephone reassurance. And I had a lady that I was actually on the phone with her for 40 minutes.
Okay.
And she was just wanting somebody to talk to.
We have that in our office. We do that. And it's great they call us because that's what we're there for.
And
But
same
yeah.
with our volunteers that take the meals out, they're delivering to however many people they have on their list for that day. And they end up spending a lot of time, just talking to the people that are homebound that, they would possibly come to the center if we had the transportation to go get them and bring them.
Right.
And, to be around people their age and the activities that we do. And it's just sad to see so many people that aren't able to do it and be around and be active because we don't have the funding for the transportation. So it's just,
Thanks.
I've just recently, I've only been doing it about 6 weeks, and there are a lot of people out there that are just lonely and need,
Okay, you're right.
to come
Thanks.
in and be around more people, and we just don't have the transportation to get them there.
Okay. Well, I'll talk with the guys today, and we'll see what the
That's
next
awesome.
funding that comes around in the next budget cycle.
All right,
So thanks.
thank you so much.
So I was just giving the hand, almost said the finger, but not the finger, the hand. It was this one, like, yeah, all of them. So let me just hit a couple of things that just happened just recently that probably on your mind or you saw in the news. One is the reauthorization of FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Services Grant. There was a big debate on that, and here's the issue. The issue, there's a bigger issue than that, but is how do you track terrorists? And so what, you probably heard this term called 702 if you really follow it, and that's a section of the law. So if I have actually two phones in my, I have a Verizon phone and an AT&T phone in the other pocket, one's personal, one's government. And so if you're trying to track, the way that used to the old days, they would just go tap if you had a mafia don, you go tap South Central Bell and you could move, if you got a warrant to do it, right? Now there's just so many different burner phones, different phones, and you can't expect like Verizon and AT&T to just maintain years and years and years of records. And so what they did under the original Patriot Act is whenever your phone call is made, there's a collection. It's just collect the number to the number. Number to the number. It's just in a massive database. And so a lot of people who were fighting this last couple of weeks ago just don't agree that should even exist. But the problem is if you got a foreign terrorist, it's hard to trace them if you don't have it. And so under FISA, this is what the debate was last week. So I can tell you a couple of weeks ago, you can only use this database for a foreign person. You don't know if they're a terrorist or not, you use it, right? A foreign person on foreign soil. So if I'm a non-U.S. citizen in Bullitt County and I'm texting, they can't do anything with me. They can't. You got to have a warrant to do that. You got to have a warrant. If you're a U.S. citizen and you're in Kabul, Afghanistan, you have to have a warrant to check. Here's the issue that was, I thought, very conflated, was you've got a foreign person in Kabul, Afghanistan, and you're following them. And all of a sudden they text Brett Guthrie and Bowling Green. So what people were saying is that as soon as my name appeared, they had to stop and go get a warrant because they couldn't go any further because now a U.S. citizen's involved. And the issue with that is, why would they get a warrant on me if it's just a text? Because you read this, so people say I've had people say voted against the Fourth Amendment. I swore to uphold the Constitution when I was 19 at West Point. To this day, the Fourth Amendment protects you, and words matter. It says unreasonable searches and seizures, and you have to have a probable cause and a warrant to get a warrant. I mean, a probable cause to get a warrant to search. Well, that infers you've done some homework before you show up to the judge. I mean, you can't, I want to go get a warrant on Brett Guthrie. Why? Well, his name appeared. What was his name? Well, it was just in the file. And they go, well, I'm not going to give you a warrant to go check it. I think that's protecting us as well. And so what can happen now is 702. So what people were trying to make you get a warrant just for that. So what happens is, the way it's supposed to work. Now, there's been abuses of the 702. And people say, what's been abused? Well, there was a lying to it. The Carter page was lying to the FBI to get a warrant. So a warrant was issued as under false pretenses. And there's been evidences of people in the intelligence community. There's one evidence, and they've all been punished and fired for, he was going to hire a babysitter for his daughter. Says, I'll go check all of her text messages. And that's wrong. That just was wrong. So the law doesn't allow that anyway. So the question, though, what happens if a U.S. citizen's name appears with a foreign terrorist? And so then they can run your name through the section. And if it's just like, there's one, it's the guy's uncle, he said, happy birthday, let's move on. But if all of a sudden Brett Guthrie's texting 20 other people, and these are kind of known folks, then you have to go to a judge to get a warrant. You can't take any action on a U.S. citizen from that search until you get a warrant. And so I kind of looked at it. If you have if say you got what happened was in the 4 people that were murdered in Idaho, they're the college students. They found DNA at the site that didn't belong to one of the 4 victims. So they ran it through Ancestry.com. People said, well, that person volunteered. And they found an uncle of this person and said, this matches like 80% of the DNA or whatever the number an uncle would be. And so they go, wow, this guy lives in Pennsylvania. He couldn't have been here. So they start searching. without a warrant, because you don't need a warrant at that time. They go, wow, this guy has a nephew who goes to Washington State and he's on a video outside the house. Then they go get a warrant. But there's some activity until you get to the warrant phase, because you have to have reason to get a warrant. And so I think you're protected from unreasonable. Remember that it's not no search, it's unreasonable searches and seizures. And we got to be very careful how we define that for our liberty and freedom. But that was kind of the other thing we voted Saturday night was our aid package. And I did vote to help Ukraine. And I believe this is that I think everybody who was for or against it, number one priority is American men and women not fighting in Europe. All right, we have the 5th Corps. Some of you probably have friends that serve in the 5th Corps, just 10 miles, 20 miles from here, that's got a lot of people in Poland right now. There would be a whole lot more of them in Poland if Ukraine fails. And so it's not a matter of let's quit funding them and Putin's going to negotiate an ending. If we quit funding them, Ukraine will fall. Now, the question I always say is Europe should pay more. And I think it's good that we've spent the last 6 months debating this, because of that, Europe has paid more. The European Union, the group, I know Britain's not part of the European Union, but Europe has put over 100 billion euros into fighting it, and we're less than that. And so my thought was, and I really believe this, if Ukraine is to fail, then Putin has said he's going to attack, he wants, not attack, but he wants to annex the Baltics, which are Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, which are NATO countries, that are part of our alliance. And so the problem would be, in my opinion, if we don't help Ukraine and Ukraine falls and he starts pointing to the Baltics, and I've said that to somebody that was really opposed to my vote, and they go, you really believe Putin would attack a NATO country? Is that crazy? And I said, well, the point is he said he would. And the second point is whether he will or not, we have to prepare for it. It will cost far more money than move forward. The other one was Israel, helping Israel. Fighting, they're getting missiles from Iran. I think some people were opposed to helping Israel. They were attacked by Hamas. They're fighting Iran now. And so helping our ally, stable ally in the Middle East. And then the other one is what we're going to do with Taiwan. And that's such a sticky issue, and how we're finally going to get back to settling our issues with China. I wish that China would be a lot more responsive than they are. President Xi has taken the country backwards, in my opinion. They used to reach out to the West and try to be part of the West, and now he's, his thesis in college, in communist school, when you go to communist school, when you're part of the Communist Party, his graduate thesis was Stalin got it right. That you got to be forceful. You got to, if you're going to run a communist government, you got to control. You have to have control, and you do, because human nature is to be free and to be open. And if you want people not to be free, not have liberty, not pursue their pursuit of happiness, then you got to control them. And that's what they're doing, and it's a shame moving forward. But the big debate for most people here was more in my district, not here, but it was Ukraine. And I just feel like, and of the 60 billion, they keep saying that's the number, 30 billion of that was to replace stuff we've already sent to Ukraine. So it's actually replacing our moving forward. I wish we'd have separated those two numbers. And then there was 30 billion was for military assistance. And there is some social assistance because their economy's down, so to make sure they still have food and they have things moving forward. And all of that was a loan. It's a forgivable loan, but it was a loan moving forward. So any questions on that before? Are you going to pull the plug on me moving forward? But that's why I voted for it. I think we're going to be in worse shape if Ukraine falls. I think it's, the narrative that Putin needs to be stopped is hard to debate. I think it's just Putin absolutely needs to be stopped of what he's doing. I don't know what good comes out of him. The Russians controlling Eastern Europe again. We've been there, and we've seen it. If anybody has, I'd love to hear counterpoints.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Why would you create a forgivable loan? I mean, the argument right now for U.S. citizen, and I'm completely opposed to forgiving student loans. But
you're right.
You just counter to.
Well, the problem is, right, so it's a loan that they're expected to pay back to be enforced by the president. So it will be next year. We could have a different president next year, so it depends on moving forward. The reason it was set up that way, what if we get a year from now when they're supposed to pay it back and there's still an issue, so it can be, yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
You get building up. I'm just curious because that phrase right there, forgivable loan.
Yeah, it's a loan, it's a forgivable, so they can be forced to pay it back. That's the thing. Otherwise, it would have, remember, we had to get this through the Senate. And so the House was for a loan. The Senate said, we'll do a loan, but it can be forgivable. And so that was the compromise to get it there. I was for loan, and so the next president, or the next, whoever's president next time will be able to make that decision, but at least we got the Senate to go that far. That's the simple answer. It was a compromise to get that moving forward. Well, the Senate wasn't gonna go that direction until we did. Yeah, no, they're ready to move, aren't they, something?
How can a country that's in the economic shape that it's in right now ever pay a loan back?
Who, Ukraine?
Yes.
Well, until they settle the war, they probably would be difficult to pay it back. Yeah, till that's settled. Yeah.
So it may be.
Maybe years before. I don't know if hundreds is the right word, but I will tell you they'll be in worse shape if Russia takes on. I think they will be. And so people say there's got to be some kind of settlement where Russia gets, there's some Russian-speaking person, some people, a portion of Ukraine. But you're not going to get Putin to the negotiating table if we're not helping Ukraine. That's the thing. We need to get it settled. We need to get it settled. All right, I think are you taking the microphone now?
I am.
All right.
So in the interest of the Congressman's time today, thank you so much for coming. Super informational. I'm sure he can answer questions after, if you would like. But thank you so much for coming today. I know as a friend of Congressman Guthrie, he will appreciate this statement that the chamber does not endorse any candidates, good or bad. Obviously, I think you've seen today he is a fellow human, so please talk to him at will. But again, we're here to bring you information, and thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Hopefully it was helpful. Yeah.
Thanks. I'll be here to mingle.